everybody. Welcome to Moms on a Mission. Today, we have the pleasure of having Dr. Jim Meehan back. We're going to continue our hormone chat, hormone 2.0 conversation, and we're going to delve into more of that. I know there's a lot of misinformation out there. I know I have been given some misinformation, and so I'm really looking forward to learning along with you all and with Julie to learn some different options that we have. We're also going to delve further into his hormone optimization therapy as well. So welcome to the show, Dr. Meehan.
Oh, thanks, Moms. Thanks for having me again. I enjoyed our last conversation. I'm really excited about this one because this is critical. This is hormones are the foundation of our health, and they're being disrupted. And I think it's intentional. I think that we're literally being poisoned in our food, our water, our personal care products. Many of the things that are disrupting health are hormone disruptors.
Well, I have to tell you before we get too far down the road that you inspired me, and I now have, and this is not a lot to do with hormones, but maybe because I know they put bad stuff on our foods, but I started a garden. And
yes, good.
You did that first week we met with you. You're talking about our food. So I thought, well, you said start with herbs. So I thought at least I could do some herbs. Well, I got a little carried away. I've got tomatoes, green peppers, cucumbers, zucchini
in your backyard.
In my backyard.
You
John
dug a hole.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I know, and I am so fired
dug
up.
a hole and
I need to see a picture of this.
Okay, I will take a picture and bring it. So anyway, I just wanted to give you a plug for that and inspire
good.
All
that's
that
great.
are thinking about it. You can start small and then it might get bigger, but I'll let you know how it goes. Cause I come from a gardening family. So maybe I've got a green thumb I didn't know about. But anyway.
I sure hope so.
Okay.
I'm super excited to learn this.
I'll bring some vegetables.
Surprise. Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. So on to hormones. So we talked last time, we got started talking about that, discovered a few things about ourselves. So let's just jump right into hormones 2.0.
Yeah.
Take it over.
Well, first thing I would say about the way I like to look at hormones is, speaking of gardens, I like to think of it like watering a garden. If you don't water your garden, the plants start, not only will they not bloom and bear fruit, but the plants will start to wilt and wither. And hormones are like that to the cells in your body and the tissues and the organ systems in your body. They are foundational. Hormone receptors are in every cell in the body. And when they start to diminish, either as we get older, although I would say, the problem we're seeing in the population right now is young people are developing hormone deficiencies very early because of this hormone disruption, endocrine disrupting chemicals just everywhere. So starting a garden is really, really important. But now you got to water that garden. And as I said, hormones impact every cell in your body. So when they diminish, you're no longer, dividing your muscle cells, creating new muscle cells. You're not able to repair and recover from injuries, et cetera. And so if you think of hormones like water to the garden, you're really close to how foundational it is to your health to get them in balance. So we've kind of talked about last time about all the things that are disrupting them. A lot of it is coming in through our food. The biggest one is glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup. Another one, atrazine, is another herbicide that's being sprayed often in conjunction with Roundup on our foods, much of the foods that we're buying in the grocery store, because Roundup, some of the weeds are becoming resistant to it. So now they're spraying this atrazine that is such a powerful estrogen-like molecule that it turns male frogs into female frogs in Berkeley, California, where they were studying this issue. So we have all of these things that are driving our hormones down. So even, young women like yourself are finding themselves at a fraction of the hormone levels that they had that, a decade ago, 2 decades ago, we didn't have as much of the problem. It's been growing over the last several decades.
So I'm going to ask you a question real quick. So some of these things, some of these problems when women the hormones are awry and they're not well balanced and their garden is not watered, I would like to talk to you about sleep. So that is one symptom of after you go through menopause. So why can I not sleep very well? It's like I'm asking for a friend, but actually I'm asking for myself. So I used to sleep great. And now I've noticed since menopause that I don't sleep as well. And so I'm just wondering what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's thousands of chemical reactions. There's thousands of cellular processes that are not able to, are not able to function. So, I mean, I'll just take one for example. So, one of the things that happen, one of the processes that will result in just the shutdown of cellular function. So, one of the things that your hormones do, let's take your testosterone. Testosterone is important, men and women, men and women, we all have the same hormones. We just have different levels and ratios and proportions of those hormones. But testosterone, one of the things that it does is it will cause your red blood cells to replicate. If you have an anemia, we used to use testosterone as a treatment for anemia. We still do. I use it all the time to drive your red blood cells up. If you're in low level of red blood cells, your red blood cells do what? They capture oxygen in the lungs. They carry that oxygen to every cell in the body. About 17 quadrillion mitochondria. They carry it right to those mitochondria, those little cellular energy plants that create ATP. It's ATP, the molecule of energy that your body creates from oxygen, that fuels all of the energetics, all of the cellular repair, the recovery, the important processes that need to be done. So if your hormones decline, your red blood cell count starts to decline. Now you can't even deliver oxygen. You don't have energy. And
that
so
makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of a system that is so hormone dependent and it can affect everything. Some people are walking around with a low grade anemia and they're just suffocating every day. They can't produce energy, so they don't sleep well, they don't heal well, they don't do anything well. Their brain, your brain's being deprived of oxygen, your muscles, your kidneys, your retina. And so it's just things start shutting down when they're not getting that androgen receptor, that estrogen receptor, the hormone receptors. When they don't get stimulated, stuff just doesn't work. It all starts to shut down. That's the critical importance. Now, some people, some of your listeners and viewers are probably going to say, well, what is Dr. Meehan, what is his expertise in this? And it's a fair question because I started my career as an ophthalmologist, but I came into hormone therapy and trained in endocrinology because I had a serious problem. I had a hormone deficiency as a result of damaging my pituitary gland as an athlete, and I couldn't control any of those hormonal systems. So I had to figure it out. At first, I started just doing men because we're easy. Men have a pretty, they have a 24-hour.
That's an interesting word that you use to describe you men.
Yeah, men are easy. Yeah. I mean, our hormones are easy. We're complicated.
Okay, thank you.
But our hormonal rhythm is pretty, it's pretty understandable. Women have a very complex rhythm. It's, it's beautiful. I call it a harmonious one. It's complicated, but it's also poorly understood in medicine.
Yes.
And so I had to become an expert in all of the, control of our hormones, growth hormone, thyroid hormone, sex hormones, et cetera. And I went deep in that. I'm obsessive, my background is surgery and, microsurgery. So I'm kind of, it's by nature, I'm obsessive. So I want to know everything that I possibly can. I've had 25 years to study it to the microbiology, the microphysiology kind of level to really try to get a better understanding, because I just don't accept most of what I'm told and taught. I mean, yes, I mean, you have to be, because look at what happens when you're not.
Yeah.
So I wanted to understand it as complex, as completely as I possibly could. Now, I will tell you that I think that in these complex systems, we understand 1%. So that when I approach something that I can, I have to assume that I know 1% of the complexity. I better look to the healthiest members of the population. I want to look at what is God's design. How did he design that system? And really look at the healthiest members of the population. So that was a big part of my last 25 years, is studying the healthiest members of the population, especially when it comes to hormones, because we have a lot of data from like Olympic athletes and elite athletes that we do a lot of blood testing on. And one of the things that I came to learn is how broad and how ranged the different, the levels are. A lot of elite athletes, wrestlers, gymnasts, they have they're in the the top 1% of the population that is not well reflected in the laboratory reference range. In fact, the laboratory reference range, first thing I'll teach you is that is a very unhealthy population in aggregate. So we're looking at a population that is mostly sick people and is not doesn't reflect the healthiest members of the population. And so sometimes, if you have a estradiol level that's higher than the laboratory reference range, well, that might actually be optimal. It just depends. So I like to explain that to everybody. But the most important thing that I think we're getting wrong in women's hormones is we're not paying attention to that rhythmic rise and fall throughout a 28-day cycle. Women have a 28-day cycle in general. Can be 26, maybe 31, but on average, it's about 28 days. Every 28 days, the uterine lining sheds and a period starts. But about 12 to 13 days after the onset of a period, estradiol levels in your body will reach a peak. In fact, let me share my screen so we have something visual to kind of look at.
And as you're bringing that up, what is estradiol? I've heard you say, is that a form of estrogen or is that a different hormone?
Yeah. So it's the main estrogen. There's three forms of estrogen, and it's the primary, the most powerful molecule of estrogen. And then the other two kind of vacillate between themselves and estradiol. So they can, estrone and estriol are just modifications of the main estrogen, estradiol. But estradiol is the main one, and we'll kind of lump them all of the estrogens into our discussion. We'll just talk mainly about estradiol. Can you see that my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So estrogen is reflected by that pink line there. You can see how day one of a typical cycle is the first day of bleeding, the beginning of the period. It's usually, 4 or 5 days of shedding the uterine lining, which, by the way, is very protective. It's an important part of protecting that uterine cavity that can be colonized by bacteria and viruses, and shedding it is a cleansing process that's very important. We're also shedding the uterine lining that was being stimulated in anticipation that there might be a pregnancy. So every month, your body is preparing for pregnancy, for the implantation of an egg. But we're going to talk about the 28 days in which there is not a pregnancy and the uterine lining is going to be shed. So estrogen will be very low. All of the hormones are very low in that first 4 or 5 days of the cycle in which the period is shedding that uterine lining. But then your body is going to start preparing the lining for the possibility of a pregnancy. But it's not just about pregnancy. So that's another thing I would say. Your hormones are not focused just on your uterus. So they're focused on your brain, your muscles, your retina, your kidneys. All of the tissues are responding to this rhythmic rise and fall. So you see estrogen goes up, peaks on day 13, comes back down, secondary peak around day 22. Estrogen, you can see, dominates the first half of the cycle. This is kind of the stimulatory, preparing the body for a pregnancy. It's also replicating bone cells. It's making your bones stronger. Estrogen is all of this anabolic drive or cell replication is happening in the first half of the cycle. And then in the second half of the cycle, progesterone starts to dominate. And this balance between estrogen, estradiol, and progesterone is really critical. It's progesterone is kind of the anti-cancer hormone. It's the rest and relax hormone. It's the chill hormone. What estrogen is kind of stimulating, progesterone comes in the second half of the cycle and shuts it down, cools it off, so that there's this balance between like exercise and rest, replication and rest. Mm-hmm. The big issue is there's a lot of estrogen stimulating toxins in the environment. Atrazine that we talked about. There are no progesterone-like molecules in the environment. So this is why we see an increase in breast cancers, ovarian cancers, and hormone-sensitive cancer types. It's because we've got lots of things trying to stimulate estrogen, stimulate, drive, replicate, but nothing like progesterone in a woman's body, or, coming from outside of the body into their body through their food, et cetera, to counter all of that estrogen that's coming into it. So this progesterone being in balance is critical.
Tell me how that works after you've gone through menopause, and if you don't take any hormone replacement therapy, I assume, obviously.
Yeah. No, I got you. It doesn't, it goes down, but it does not go off. So these peaks may not be so high, but they're still peaks. So if I could take this and flatten the curve and maybe reduce these all to smaller representations, that's what happens. Even after menopause, even after the ovaries you've released the last egg from your ovaries, even after you have released the last egg from the ovaries, and that's really what signals menopause, is the brain and the ovaries are still communicating with each other. They're still trying to produce this rhythmic rise and fall of your hormones, to a lesser extent, not as high a peak, but they're still doing that rhythmic rise and fall, because they're still trying to keep your bones healthy, your muscles present, your nerves healing, your brain functional. They're still trying to do all of those things.
And
so it doesn't just shut off and go to nothing.
What if you don't have a uterus or ovaries?
Still same thing. It's still, your brain is still trying to send those messages. The brain is a sensor in this system. So it's sensing your hormone levels. If it doesn't like where they are, if they're too low, it'll send a message through the pituitary gland. If your pituitary gland can receive and send that message, some people's can't. If they've had significant head trauma, may have damaged the pituitary. But that pituitary will then take that signal from the brain, and it will send out its own signal to the ovaries, trying to stimulate them to produce estradiol, testosterone, progesterone. And that rhythmic rise and fall goes on throughout life.
Well, I think this is so critical for women to hear this information about what you just said about the estrogen. Too much estrogen or your hormones being out of balance can cause cancers and cause other problems. And like you were saying, Miriam, you maybe have got some misinformation, like a lot of women, and we touched on that last time. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about related to this, keeping those all those things in place, the estrogen with the estradiol and the three estrogens, three forms of estrogen under estrogen, and then progesterone and testosterone, is keeping those in the right ratio. So I've touched on that. I've just started learning about that myself, getting a little bit older. I want to be really in touch with that, because obviously I don't want to raise my chances for cancer, breast cancer, or any other forms of cancer, but also keeping my muscle tone up and just other systems of my body healthy. So what would you say about learning how to understand the ratios, and how would you ask your doctor to check those things?
Well, so if you go back to that, and let's go back to this curve, you have to measure your hormones on very specific times. So it's ideal if you're still having periods, you have a little bit, you have powerful signals as to where you are in this rhythmic cycle, right? So if a doctor sends you to the lab without some context as to where you are in this cycle, I want you to go on day 13 or 13 days after the beginning of your last period, because that's going to give us the peak level of estrogen that your ovaries are producing. Now, this level may be 400 or 500 when you're in your 20s, and it may be 2 or 3 when you're in your 70s or 80s. But where you are in that spectrum is going to tell us a lot about what your hormones are capable of doing, because hormones work at the genetic level. They are working to turn on your DNA to create proteins. One of the things that estradiol does, the reason I want to check on day 13 is because estrogen is your main hormone for opening up the DNA to transcribe and create the receptors for the other hormones. So estrogen actually signals how much of the androgen receptor should be created, how many receptors for your testosterone should be created. It creates the receptors for itself as well, and even progesterone. Not by itself, but primarily estrogen is one of the most important hormones, men and women, by the way, for how many receptors you're creating in every cell in your body. Now, if you go, let's say you have 100 receptors in every cell in your body when your ovaries are producing 400 or 500 units of estrogen when you're in your 20s. Now, by the time you're in your 70s or 80s and your estradiol has fallen off, the highest level in the month is, let's say, 2, 3, 5. Now you might have 2 or 3 receptors to receive hormones. That, it used to be 100, now it's 2. So your body is no longer capable of receiving the signal. This is important so some women get testosterone therapy, which can be very useful and lots of benefits. But if you don't have estrogen, if you don't have an estrogen level capable of creating the receptors, many times your doctors are overdosing you on testosterone that you can't receive. It just floats around in your bloodstream. It looks good. I mean, on a lab test, it looks like it's fine, but it's like a kid that doesn't, an unruly teenager that doesn't go to school. He's just bouncing around the neighborhood causing problems. And so you'll get
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to the hormones have to be in balance, and you can't just give one. The other thing that I would say, I've done every approach to hormone therapy over the last 25 years. We're doing it wrong. I've done all the wrong ways. Pellets is not a great way to do hormones. Not only is it going to, turn your butt into a lumpy butt, you're going to get scar tissue, but it creates a very abnormal rhythm. Your hormones don't go up for a month and a half, 2 months, and then slowly come down over 6 months. That's nonsense. I hate to say, there's going to be some doctors out there that are, they love it because it pays well. But, and it's easy. The way I do it is harder because we've got to recreate these rhythms, but we should obey the biology. We should, replicate God's perfect design. And when we do, when we restore hormones in this rhythmic fashion, and that is hard, you got to use, I'll give you an example of how we could do that. So we use these little, transdermal dispensers. They have the cream in here. It has a twistable base. Every time you twist the base, it advances the plunger a calibrated amount. You get a calibrated amount of the cream that comes through a little hole right in the top. So we can take the estrogen in the transdermal cream base, and we can give you a dosing chart, a 28-day dosing chart that says, okay, days 1 through 4, maybe it's just 3 or 4 clicks of the base. But as we reach day 13, it progressively increases just like your blood levels normally would. We can increase your blood levels by the transdermal delivery of a calibrated amount that has a dose increase up to day 13, then it goes down, goes back up on day 22. So we can recreate that healthy, youthful rhythm, maybe not the same levels that you had at 20, but at 50 or 60, we can create a rhythm that is biologically what we expect to see. So we replicate that perfect design, and we do it. So you would get one of these for estrogen, you get one for progesterone, and then sometimes, commonly, I will also give you testosterone once we've got the estrogen and progesterone locked in. Levels look great.
Then you have the receptors to receive.
This level of estrogen. Don't give the testosterone until you have the receptors. That's
listen
really
to that.
critical point.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
That makes sense. So if our listeners want to get a hold of you, I know meehanmd.com is behind you. You can see that. But I just wanted to share our screen.
And while you're pulling that up, obviously we want everybody in the Tulsa area to go see Dr. Meehan. But Dr. Meehan, if we have an audience of people that don't live near Tulsa, how would they find a doctor that knows the hormone like you do? Is there a certain schooling that you've been to, or is it endocrinologist, or is
it's a combination of all those things. Good luck with that. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I started.
Come to see Dr. Meehan.
Yeah, that's why I started licensing, and I think we're at 42 states now.
Oh, great! I didn't know that.
Yeah, I specialize in this, and I can see most people in 42 states. So I work with I can work with your local doctors. I love training doctors in how to do this biorhythmic transdermal hormone replacement.
We need more doctors doing this.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of scrolling through, but this is your wellness shop for women.
Mhm.
And if there would be one or two things, I mean, you have a toxin-free living starter bundle, emergency preparedness bundle, and then this FLCCC prevention protocol bundle. But
Yeah.
what would you recommend if women are not going to necessarily see, but they want to just start out? What would you recommend?
Well, I would say, so let me share this screen. Well, I would recommend the optimal pregnenolone and the optimal DHEA. So those are precursor hormones in the steroid hormone or sex hormone pathway. Pregnenolone is the grandmother of all your sex hormones. It's the first one made from cholesterol. So
Okay.
it's a direct precursor to progesterone. Your DHEA is a direct precursor to your testosterone. And then estrogen, your estrogens are made from your androgens. So let me share this screen to just kind of give a quick view. So this is a lot of the stuff I do in a first visit is, yeah, I share this, busy, complicated pathway because
That
I want
looks
you to
like
understand.
totally intimidating.
Science.
My eyes just
Science
like
class, back in science.
It does. I
over
know
my
it's like
head.
science
I
class,
love this.
but it's not that complex. It's here's your testosterone, here's your estrogen. I like for you to understand how your estrogen is made from your testosterone, but it's like a river that flows downwards. So here's the mouth of the river. This is where the water all begins with pregnenolone. If you're deficient in this hormone, you'll be deficient in everything downstream. Plus, here's a tributary in this stream that goes to your progesterone. A lot of women are really suffering painful, heavy periods because their progesterone levels are insufficient to that balance between estrogen and progesterone. It's very simple. We could eliminate a lot of the hysterectomies and putting young girls on birth control or women on birth control. We're using birth control pills to treat hormone imbalances. Birth control pill that's going to trick your brain into believing you're pregnant.
I've always been concerned.
365 days out of every year. It's just nonsense, and it's dangerous in so many ways. It's about getting these hormones in balance.
Well,
measure them at very specific times. Day 13 for estrogen, 15 for testosterone, 22 for progesterone. Make sure you've got, good balance. You're not estrogen dominant. So high estrogen, low progesterone. If you are having a heavy period with clotting and pain, it's because there was not enough progesterone to prepare that uterine lining for shedding. Instead of just gently releasing and the period beginning, it's like ripping duct tape off the inside of the uterus because the progesterone was too little to devascularize that thickened lining. Estrogen is still actively keeping the blood vessels robust, high flow. It doesn't help that uterine lining to weaken its attachments, so it just rips off. You bleed heavily. You're getting anemic if that happens, every month.
Dr. Meehan, so would you suggest that there's a baseline age, or do you wait till you have a problem? So like if you're a young woman and maybe you just started your cycles, or do you is there a good time to start that, or wait till your 20s, or wait till you're our age when you're kind of having a problem, or
Well, so the first thing I would say, if you're having painful periods, you dread your period every month, and maybe you've been put on a birth control pill and you're not having a period anymore, and you're doing it for something other than birth control, then I don't care what age you are, you probably need to, you need to see me. That getting, a simple progesterone cream could alleviate your problems, take you back to having a normal, healthy, important period every month, allowing you to, prepare your body for pregnancy instead of, which, by the way, when we don't have periods, when we do birth controls, when we don't have pregnancies, we increase breast cancer and all, hormonal based cancers. We are, I could go so deep into those kind of things, but let's say you're approaching menopause and you don't know whether you're in menopause. It's a real irregular cycle. It's starting to become infrequent. That the sooner you start, you don't want to be in menopause for 10 years and then start then. But you can. The sooner you prevent the garden from wilting and withering, the better your health is going to be. It's like trying to save a garden that's just almost dried out is much harder than let's just get it watered as soon as you start seeing those things wilt and wither.
That's
when
good.
you're in the symptoms of deficiency, you can look them up. But if you're having hot flashes, that's an estrogen deficiency. If you've got bone loss, if you have no libido, if sex is, interest in sex diminished a decade ago, those are all important hormonal aspects that will signal something much more serious, a slow erosive loss of your muscles, your brain tissue, your heart shrinking, your bones are becoming weak. And before those things develop, get ahead of it and get the proper treatment as soon as possible. And I mentioned that pregnenolone and DHEA as supplements because by putting more water upstream, many times your body can, take that raw material, the pregnenolone and DHEA, and use that to take some of the burden off what the ovaries and the adrenal glands can't keep up with anymore and turn that into some of those downstream hormones. It's why DHEA is a banned substance in the Olympics because it can increase your testosterone.
Wow,
if you increase your testosterone, you might be able to increase your estradiol a little bit. Pregnenolone will increase your progesterone. And plus they have their own benefits. So that's a good starting point.
We could
get your hormones measured at specific times.
So go to your website and get some pregnenolone or DHEA.
Yeah.
Okay.
And get tested.
Yeah.
Because remember, hormones affect everything. It's not just hot flashes and a little bit of aging. It affects every part of your body. So that should be some incentive for women and probably men too. We didn't talk about that. We're focused on women, but they have their own issues. But we are so glad we were able to have you on again, Dr. Meehan. We'll have you back on next month. And we may continue to talk about hormones or there's lots of things we can keep talking. Maybe gardening.
Yeah. If you get any questions that, from your listeners and viewers, just send them. I'd love to address questions because I know there's going to be a ton because there's so much, some women have been told by their doctors that, well, you don't need progesterone if you don't have a uterus anymore, if you've had that hysterectomy.
A lot of misinformation.
It's just not true. It's just so, that's like saying, if you're not growing corn anymore, you don't need to water the garden. No, you still got to water the tomatoes and the rosemary and everything else.
That's right.
It's a horrible analogy, but bear with me on that.
We get it.
We get it.
Yeah.
Hormones are important. Get them checked.
They're important.
Very
and Dr. Meehan can get you on the right track and you'll feel so much better. So that's kind of exciting news because I think a lot of women give up.
Yeah.
So Dr. Meehan, we are so grateful and thankful for the information today. We can't wait to see you again in a few weeks. And audience, yes, please reach out to us with questions and comments. You can go to our website at momsonamission.net or leave us an email at moms@momsonamission.net. That's moms@momsonamission.net.
And they can go to meehanmd.com.
Yes.
And with the pregnenolone or DHEA, and if you purchase that, and if you type in moms10 and the promo code area, you'll save 10%.
Yeah.
So you can save some money and get your hormones balanced. So
yes. And please check us out on your favorite platform.
Moms on a Mission is excited to partner with our friends at MyPillow. According to sleep experts and sleephealth.org, over 50 million Americans struggle to get a good night's rest. That's where MyPillow comes in. They make the best pillows, sheets, mattresses, and mattress toppers. Several years ago, I was having trouble falling and staying asleep due to neck and shoulder pain. Luckily, I heard an ad about MyPillow and decided to give it a try. After 3 or 4 days, I really began to feel the difference. I was sleeping better and my neck and shoulders felt so much better. MyPillow really does help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. Moms on a Mission wants you to get a great night's rest too. Go to mypillow.com right now and use the promo code MISSION for up to 66% off your purchase. MyPillow products are made in America and have a 60-day money-back guarantee and lifetime warranty. Remember, go to mypillow.com, put in the special code MISSION for your special Moms on a Mission discount. Thank you and God bless. Hey guys, it's Moms on a Mission here. Are you worried about your financial stability and protecting the money for which you work so hard? The problem is stock market volatility and inflation. You may be wondering what you can do to preserve your family's wealth. We at Moms on a Mission encourage you to reach out to our friend Andrew Sorcini with Beverly Hills Precious Metals. Andrew is the expert in educating you to help you find the right balance of gold and silver for your family portfolio. He made it so easy for me to add precious metals to my financial investments. I simply mailed a check to Beverly Hills Precious Metals and my silver showed up on my doorstep a few days later. It was so easy. Go to bh-pm.com to save a little money and tell them that Moms on a Mission sent you. That's bh-pm.com. Don't wait. Protect your wealth today by going to bh-pm.com and tell them that Moms on a Mission sent you. Hi everybody, it's Moms on a Mission here. Recent research from the CDC says that millions of Americans develop parasitic infections and symptoms often go unnoticed or are misdiagnosed.
Parasites are the cause of many health problems, such as anxiety, depression, chronic pain, fatigue, and unexplained digestive issues. We all need a common sense strategy to improve our health.
We at Moms on a Mission encourage you to reach out to our good friend, Dr. Jason Dean. Dr. Dean's Full Moon Protocol provides all-natural detoxification and fights inflammation. These supplements are made with 100% organic ingredients and are proven to kill parasites safely and effectively.
To order your Full Moon Protocol, go to bravetv.store/mission to save $20 off your first order. That's bravetv.store/mission. Order Full Moon Protocol and start killing those foreign invaders that have been keeping you sick. That's bravetv.store/mission to receive $20 off your first order.